Hi, Dale. Welcome.
Hi, Bob.
As you know, we've asked you here so I can present some questions to you that you can share with the community, with the voters out there about basically what's going on. So I'm going to start.
My pleasure.
With a pretty easy one for you. After 20 years, why are you running for the board again? Can you find any TV shows you like?
Well, as far as TV shows go, again, my wife is very concerned I watch too much Fox News. So it's, I think she's looking for me to find other activities. But after 20 years, I think I still have value. Value in the sense that I can offer information that would be of importance to the board as they deliberate different items. And with 20 years of experiences, there isn't, I can't say I have seen it all, but I have seen a lot. And I would look forward to the opportunity to continue to share and participate.
So I get the feeling that the fire is still there. Would that be an assumption? Is that a correct assumption?
Yes. Now I will admit that I thought after 20 years this was going to be it, and my wife thought, yep, this was going to be, I would be home more, but the events, the project, it just, again, it gave me more of a purpose.
Good. All right. You're out here in Eldred, Cascade, the general outskirts. People often claim that the only kids that the board cares about are the kids in town. Is that true?
Well, if it wasn't on your paper, Bob, you wouldn't be asking me that question because you know the answer.
I definitely know the answer to that.
I have never, in the 20 years, had any discussion, any decision that wasn't made for the betterment of all the students. There was never a group singled out that a decision was focused upon. So I think with that, no group was excluded. But the board always tried to do what was best for the students. Didn't matter where you were from.
And second part of that question, I think you've answered, but in case you want to elaborate, what do you do to protect the interests of the students you represent?
Our district is divided into 3 regions, and I think that's an effort to make even more local representation. So for folks that live in the townships that I represent, they would and should contact me when they have concerns or questions. I'll have to admit, oftentimes I point them in the direction that the question can best be answered, that I don't have answers to these questions. But I do ask most times that they get back to me to let me know if their concern had been answered or resolved. And they always have that opportunity to bring it before the full board. So, again, over the years, yeah, there's been questions here or there, but I think because I'm still interested in doing another term, the questions, it hasn't been that difficult or that heated.
Good. All right, you've seen a lot of people come and go from the school board in your time, including myself.
Yeah.
What qualities do
there's good and there's bad ones.
What qualities do Tom and Jeff have that make them worthy of staying on the board?
I'd have to say that their ability, and it's not necessarily an ability, it's just their personality fits well with the team. And that's really what a school board, to be effective, has to be, that we need to do things as a team. Now, you can have differences of opinions, and we do. That sometimes makes for a lively discussion. But both of them, I think, are very good at eventually focusing on what's best for the district and for the team. I think in Tom, I mean, he has leadership qualities that if you've been to board meetings, you've seen that gift that he has.
Yes.
And for me personally with Jeff, he and I were both on negotiating committees, and he would oftentimes bring a certain clarity, to the discussion, get us back on point when the discussion was starting to go off track. And so I think that, again, it's a voice that needs to be heard.
You mentioned about sometimes differences of opinion. Do you think that those differences of opinion make the board stronger because it leads you to an answer that everybody wants to hear?
Makes us stronger, yes. I won't say it always leads us to an answer that everybody wants to hear. Sometimes the answer is not what everyone wanted to hear. But that difference of opinion, yes, it's again can lead to some lively discussions, amongst the board members. But at the end of the day, there's always a consensus reached, and well, I like the term. We can agree to disagree.
All right, you've been called an elitist. What kind of elitist things do you do?
When I first heard that term, I guess I was thinking, wow, people really view, not myself, but the full board as being upper tier. We are good at what we do. And I probably, maybe it's because it was basketball season, so you've got the Elite Eight. So anyway, obviously it was being used in a derogatory manner. So I can only, my personal opinion, that was a few individuals that were observing how a board meeting was being conducted. And what they failed to realize was that board members, during public comment period, have a role to listen, to look for valuable information that would lead a later discussion amongst the board members themselves, but information that would have an impact on the decision-making process. So it's never a debate. That the board member's role is to listen and again use that information to make decisions, trying to figure out what's fact and fiction, remove the emotion, stay with just what's good sound data.
Okay. All right, you've been called by most on the board the go-to guy for anything regarding finances. Why would they call you that, and is it a true characterization?
Well, it's a compliment that I try and stay humble in my thought process about it. But I've been fortunate that when I first got on the board, there was a very strong financial chairperson, Mr. Chuck Grimm, and I think of Chuck as being my mentor. So when he left the board about 8 years ago, I was appointed chairperson of finance, and I took that leadership role very seriously. I'm a very analytical person. I like to know the facts. I like to have as much information as possible so I can make the best decision. And so when it comes to the budget, I do my homework. And I think other board members, be it right or wrong, rely on my analysis of the information. Over the years, I've learned how to ask the right questions. I understand the budget. And so being the go-to guy, I think it just, sometimes it's easiest to get the answer by asking me, and so they do.
I will say this, I had the honor of sitting with you on a couple of negotiating teams.
Yes.
And when they call you the go-to guy, they're hitting the nail on the head. Trust me.
You need to have a plan for everything.
I know. I learned that real well from my mentor. All right. Not many people know about the pre-bid letter that Option 6 candidates handed out in an effort to sabotage the bids on the construction process. Could you explain to us what they did? Was it legal? And in your mind, do you think it affected the bids?
Okay. A lot of it, in my opinion, would be third party. And I wasn't there at the conference, but in the construction process, there's a time when the various contractors need to know what they're bidding on. And so there's what they call a pre-bid conference. And basically contractors that are interested in bidding on the project come pick up information and then can really make accurate bidding estimates that they in turn would submit. At this pre-bid conference, which is a public meeting, there were individuals from Option 6 presented a letter to the various contractors that in the letter implied that they were representing the new and true board of directors. And as such, they were going to be the ones that would be in charge of future projects. And if a contractor elected to bid on this project, it would not be viewed favorable by this new board. Was it legal? I don't know. I'm not an attorney. Was it unethical? Yes, by my standards. Very much so. Did it affect the process? Again, hard to call. I would just, for me personally, there was a project completed, well, the bid process completed nearby at Lewisburg. So one would think that the bidders on that project would have been interested in doing ours as well. That was a high school project. They had 5 or 6 general contractor or construction bidders. We had 2. Were others influenced? I don't know, but I would offer some conjecture that the answer to that would be yes. Did it have an effect? Well, the more competition in the bidding process, typically the better or the lower the bids would be. So if you don't have competition, the bids would be high. I can tell you, looking at just the examples within our own bid process, the general contractor bid was probably about $3 million over what the architects estimated that it should be, which for me is well beyond what cost escalation may have shown. But when looking at the electrical bids, there we had 5 or 6 bidding, and that bid was $2 million under what the architects had estimated. So it would seem to imply to me that, again, the more competitive the bid process, the better the bids are. So you draw your own conclusion from that.
All right, good answer. All right, you've obviously been here the longest and have seen the progress. Why is the valley in the condition that I keep hearing about? I have heard that there is a mold and fire hazards there. Are you responsible for this?
Responsibility, but we'll get to that. But the valley is a very functional elementary school. It has a safe and clean environment. If there were, I'll call them more minor issues through the years that I've been on the board, they've always been dealt with immediately. We have, well, I wanted to say had, because our current building and ground supervisor is in the process of retiring. But he was an excellent leader, an excellent supervisor, and wouldn't accept anything but the very best as far as the presentation of the buildings he was responsible for. And I think if you look at our custodial staff and maintenance staff, I mean, these are excellent people. I mean, they're not going to let students, teachers come into an environment that's not safe, that isn't clean. So I think that's a ridiculous accusation. It's unfounded. Was there a mold issue out of the valley? In my time there, the answer to that is yes. And the evidence of that was in a summer period of time when the building was closed up, the custodial or maintenance staff found some small areas where mold was present. They took care of it immediately, and going forward then, they became even more observant of these areas and did things to try and keep that building as open as possible to ensure that nothing like that, would develop.
How many years ago, Dale, do you remember the mold process, or the mold that you mentioned? I'm
saying it's at least 5 years. It probably was more than that. And again, I know that a few individuals who have expressed with great certainty that there was mold out there went through it with I'll call it a fine-tooth comb, and couldn't find anything. Personal opinion here, I think it was a classic Cloward and Piven move, in the sense that the focus was on the high school when those individuals started losing traction because what they were saying about the high school wasn't true. They shifted to the valley, and in an attempt to overwhelm the system. Maybe that Cloward and Piven, that gets us into another subject area, so I'm just going to let that go. If you're a community organizer, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Well, I also have in the question here about fire hazards. You didn't touch on that. I'm not familiar with any fire hazards.
Again, I can only go by if the maintenance or custodial staff saw anything, they would bring it to the immediate attention, the instructor in the room. I did see some pictures where there was a multi-plug outlet, and that would have appeared that maybe that was a fire hazard, but I believe that was a very isolated thing, and I would go back and talk to the teacher in that room and maybe review about the fact that you can't overload one particular circuit, that if she would or he would have approached the maintenance crew, they would have been able to find alternate ways to see that everything was plugged in safely. But I'm not aware of any other, fire hazard issues, out there.
I wasn't sure. All right. What do you think of any 5 new people coming onto the board at once?
Well, with 5 new ones, that's a majority of the board. That would put an immense amount of stress on the existing 4 board members. Now, our district, I believe it is blessed with exceptional leadership from the administrative staff. There's a little background noise that's leaving us now. An exceptional administrative staff, excellent teachers, support staff. You've got, I believe, a community of parents and students that understand the value of education. So with all those things in place, if a new group of board members who had the public's best interest at heart and understood what education is all about, and would take more of a learning role initially, as opposed to coming in feeling that they know exactly what needs to be done, or this is no big thing. I think a board that had the right attitude coming on could be successful because, again, of the excellent leadership that is in place, the excellent resources they would have. If a board came on that had a specific agenda, then it would be an entirely different scenario. But I just look at my own experiences. I don't think I was ineffective at the start, but I certainly came in and I have to admit I was pretty quiet because it's very overwhelming, and I didn't want to say anything stupid. But my fellow board members were very kind, and again, I got good leadership from certainly other board members, but from the administration as well.
Good. There are option 6 board members that consistently vote no. At one point, the 2 common sense board members voted against the school receiving a $10,000 donation. What's really going on the board, and why do those option 6 board members consistently vote no?
Well, I think just listening to some of the words you were saying there, I personally would never use the words option 6 in the same sentence with common sense. My dad taught me a long time ago that in order to have good common sense, you need to have all the information affordable to look at the problem that you're applying your common sense to. My dad was an auto mechanic, and it was not an unusual event for him to look to repair an item on a new car. And as he started to do the work, he discovered he didn't have the right tools, and also he had to remove some other parts of the engine to get at the part he needed to fix. So my dad never cussed, but he had a few choice words to describe the engineers that designed this. And that stuck with me because what he was telling me was, you know, those engineers didn't go and talk with the people that have to use or repair that part. And had they done that, had they done all their homework, gotten all the information, their design may have been quite different. So I think that in looking at this particular project that these option 6 folks are finding so much objection to, their information seems to be very distorted. They seem very likely to discard certain facets of the information. And so to use what they have to make any kind of decision or recommendation certainly can't use the words common sense. Now, as to how individual board members vote, I mean, we all listen to the same information. We hear the same questions, we hear the same presentation, and so it wouldn't surprise me that there could be individuals see things entirely differently. But in looking at this process, when you have 7 of the 9 do find a commonality in the decision and in the support of a particular project, it would suggest that there's probably a lot of validity to that decision. Why those individuals continue to vote no, again, I don't know.
Good. Well, Dale, that's the extent of my questions. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to come down, talk with us, and answer these questions and share your thoughts with us.
Okay, and if I might add just one comment at the end. This election in the fall, I view this as an election for the very soul of the educational programming in our district. And if people who value education can't find a reason to get out and vote, I'm going to be trying to get all the information out there to make sure that they find that reason.
Good. Well, again, thanks, Dale.
Yep. Thank you, Bob.